Hello and welcome to Fit After 40. I'm Chris here with Tony, and our guest today is Stephanie Gradone. Stephanie is a personal trainer who has a focus on moms and moms to be in her fitness practice. Stephanie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thanks for joining us. So, Stephanie, why don't we start with your personal story? What led you to the world of fitness? What made you want to become a trainer?
Well, it's kind of wild because I'm not like most trainers where I have an athletic history of any
Mhm.
sort. Um, I didn't do sports growing up. I was in marching band, so I was kind of nerdy like that. But in my adult life, I really wanted to learn how to be someone who exercises, who worked out, who took care of their body. But that was like a struggle for me too, because I just could never get past some of those barriers to getting into it. So over the years, I ended up finding this gym that just really kind of took me under their wing and really kind of made me fall in love with fitness. And then I got pregnant during that time. And during my pregnancy, I worked out through that whole pregnancy and I felt really amazing. And I was like, you know what? I feel like there's a missing link here between exercising and exercise during pregnancy. And so I just kind of took it on and became a trainer and kind of honed into that niche of pregnancy and postpartum. And that's where I am today. So
Yeah. I find
Yeah.
that very relatable. I also was not an athlete growing up, and
mhm.
I think that when you met me, you had I told you I would be a trainer at some point in my life, you probably wouldn't have believed it.
Well, you know what's funny is
So,
I was teaching a class this morning and I was telling them that I was going to be on this podcast and I was talking about our history and how
mhm.
we've been friends for so long. And I was like, had we been sitting on our front porch, because we lived in
Yep,
the same house, but we had separate apartments. And so had
it was
we
a
been sitting
duplex.
on
Yep.
that, yes. So had we been sitting on that porch just talking like we did back in the day and being like, where do you see yourself in 15 years? Like, I don't think either of us would have ever been like, we're going to be on a podcast together talking about fitness. Like, no,
Definitely
no.
not. Definitely not. It's funny how
No. So
funny
it's
how
like
life works out that way.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way that we kind of transition and go through life like this. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So let's talk about so you mentioned that you kind of saw a need for women who are or soon to be mothers. So what made you want to focus on that? Let's what need did you see that you felt like you could meet?
Yeah, well, like I said, I started working out at the very small new gym. So
Mhm.
the trainer there, she was so welcoming, so amazing. Her name is Kate Moore. Was the founder. She moved out of state now, but she, really helped me feel confident in myself and how I was exercising and teaching me how the correct form and focus on all of that. And then as my pregnancy kept going, I just kept feeling stronger and better in my body. And after my pregnancy, because it was a small gym, I was one of the first females to get pregnant there. And after that pregnancy, a, there was like a big baby boom in this gym. So all the women started having babies and
Mhm.
they, would come to me and just say, I saw you working out throughout your pregnancy and I see your back. And how did you do that? What did you do? And my personality is I really don't I could tell you my experience, but I don't want to like give you guidance on something if I'm not fully, involved in it and know what I'm talking about. So that's where I started realizing there was just this gap. It was either at the time, which was 8, 9 years ago, when I was pregnant, my first pregnancy, there was not a lot out of information out there for pregnant women. So it was either you do pregnancy yoga or you go real hard and you stay in CrossFit and you just stay pregnant and do CrossFit. There was no in between. And that was kind of where I saw a need for
Mhm.
just helping women just stay moving and not feel
Mhm.
like you have to either go hard or go into just yoga. And so
Right.
that's kind of where I found that need.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
And what is your approach? What type of routines are you recommending for the athletes you work with?
Yeah, it's all pregnancy is such a nuanced stage of
Hmm.
every woman's life. Everybody has a different pregnancy. Both of my pregnancies were night and day from each other. My first pregnancy
Wow.
was like very easy, very beautiful, and great. And I didn't get sick and I didn't have aches and pains and I felt really confident and the whole time. And I was able to work all the way up until the week before uh, my daughter was born. But like my second pregnancy, I dealt with perinatal depression. I dealt with a lot
Mm.
of morning sickness. I dealt with just like aches and pains and fatigue and all of that stuff. And then the whole postpartum experience with my second was I dealt with postpartum depression and all kinds of other things. So having those two experiences has really shown me that every pregnancy is different, but also the approach that you take with each person should be a different approach. So I have
Hmm.
some clients where we're working out constantly, we're doing a lot. And then there are other clients where I have someone who is currently in her first trimester and I haven't seen her this whole time because
Mm.
she's just that sick. And it's okay
Oh.
because once she gets back to a place, then we'll be able to like start back up and get her moving again and focused on that. And I've had clients where, I don't like I maybe work with them a handful of sessions throughout their whole pregnancy,
Hmm.
but then when it comes to the last month of their pregnancy, we just work on labor prep and getting ready for
Hmm.
that and finding that mindset and focus for that so that they can kind of get into the postpartum period feeling really good. So it's
Wow.
really, there's no specific like set plan. I could give you
Gotcha.
a blanket program, but it's more of like, how are you going to take this information and how are you going to make
Sure.
it work with where you are in your pregnancy? So
And have you found that having two incredibly different pregnancy experiences yourself has heightened your ability to connect with these women, kind of meet them where they are? Maybe
oh,
would you say
absolutely.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. I had, with my first pregnancy, I had such an amazing experience, which is what brought
Hmm.
me into all of this. And so it was like, oh, I feel so good. I want everybody else to feel good. And then
Hmm.
when those ladies were telling me, oh, I'm not feeling good, I'm like, but no, just keep doing it. You'll be
Right.
fine. And then, and I do, and I have a dear friend of mine, and we laugh about this now, but she had her second child, and I was just starting out, and I was like, yeah, you just do this and you just do that. And she was like, I don't know how you do that because I don't have any time with two kids. And I was like, oh no, you just do it.
Yeah, just
And
make
then,
time.
yeah. And then when I had my second child, it was like a big slap in the face of being like, I am so sorry. I had no idea what I
Yeah.
was talking about. So it has definitely expanded um, the way that I approach helping women. And also, we as humans and this society has really put a lot of pressure on us to like push ourselves and feel like we have to go all in all the time. And something that has happened after becoming a mom it's just softened me a lot. And
Mm.
I bring a lot of that into my training because we don't need to be pushing ourselves to past a breaking point where we feel burnt out. And really it's about the longevity of life. It's about getting through this season of pregnancy, getting through this season of postpartum, and then finding your groove again and being able
Hmm.
to like continue and enjoying these seasons, but not putting so much pressure on yourself that you are hating every moment of it
Hmm.
because you're just
Right.
unhappy with yourself.
And how else has motherhood kind of informed your perspective, both as a trainer and on kind of health and wellness writ large? Like how has this informed your approach?
um it's been I've been fairly consistent with my values as far as like health
Hmm.
and wellness goes throughout my adult life. So when I went into pregnancy, I learned a lot about just how we need to take care of our bodies differently during that time,
Hmm.
as far as like what you put into your body and all of that. But at the same time, I was already kind of living that way.
Okay.
So I guess not much has really changed from when I wasn't a mother to how I am now. But and I try not to push my values on other people because it might not align with them. Um, as far as like health and wellness goes with that. But when it comes to fitness and things like that, I'm always trying to just inform women about their body and the changes that are happening in it,
Hmm.
and letting them know, because I feel like the more knowledge you have around your body and the mechanics of it and the changes that are happening in it, the more empowered you feel to continue to move in a certain way or change your approach of how you're exercising. So,
Yeah. When it comes to you've mentioned a couple of times the time constraints, and that is definitely a common challenge that a lot of us, a lot of us feel. We've got career, we've got other commitments, two
mhm,
small kids at home.
right.
So how do you balance this in your life, and how do you try to coach people in terms of time management?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, it's really easy because this is my job. So, it's not
Sure.
hard for me to bust into a workout, because I have it on my calendar to teach a class that day. But before, when I was kind of taking a break between, like I said, I dealt with a lot of postpartum depression after my
Hmm.
second pregnancy. And so that took a long time for me to kind of come out of and find my balance with that again. And in those times, I feel like instead of putting a lot of pressure to hit a certain amount of workouts or hit certain PRs or goals or
Hmm.
anything like that, it's more about just finding the time to do something that makes you feel good in your body.
Hmm.
So, when I was in that second postpartum experience, it could be as simple as both of my kids being in school and me being able to just take a 45-minute walk for mental health and just getting
Sure.
some movement in through the day. But then, as I was able to create a routine or a habit around those certain things, then my capacity started to stretch a little bit more and I was able to add a little bit more in. So for me, a big core value is always just starting small and building
Hmm.
on that. Especially in pregnancy, especially postpartum, especially if you're dealing with a lot of like time constraints and things like that. It's more about living in the season that you're in rather than pushing for to meet certain expectations that maybe you could have in the past, but
Right.
now here in this stage of life, it's not as easy.
I'm curious, what kind of goals do your clients come to you with? Yeah, both, I know you're working now beyond just working with mothers, but
Mhm.
specifically from like maybe people in going through pregnancy and having children, like what kind of fitness goals do they come to you with uh, when they come to
Um,
you and ask you for help?
Yeah, a lot of women come to me with like vanity goals. I just want to be able to continue to exercise, but I'm scared that if I move a certain way, it might, I might hurt myself or do this or that. And like I said, it's a big thing for me is creating knowledge around why we do the movements. So for pregnancy specifically, there's a lot of focus on like the posterior chain, a lot of upper back mobility, strengthening, glute strengthening, and all of that. And it's all because the baby starts coming out forward and you lose balance and you lose, and you're just punched forward all the time. And
Hmm.
so there are just certain things where it's just about giving them the tools in their toolbox to help them get through the pregnancy. So sometimes it's
Hmm.
about vanity, sometimes it's about like proving themselves, like I want to be able to work out throughout my whole pregnancy and not feel like I had to stop at any point. And it's a mindset shift sometimes of just being like, yes, we can work towards that, but I also want you to understand these changes are going to happen regardless, and we have to be mindful and respectful of those things. And so if you need to pull back a little bit, if we need to change a little bit, if you need to start using a little bit lighter weights, or you can't do as many reps as you did before, that's going to be okay, because this is not forever. This is just right here. And we want to take care of our body how it is now, instead of pushing it past a limit that could, potentially injure ourselves after pregnancy. Things like that. I also have a lot of clients come to me because I'm very big on what I like to call labor prep. It's all about getting your body, getting your mind, and getting your focus really set on labor and delivery. So, and that always starts around week 35, where we start working on breathing techniques and learning how the body works for you and it's not working against you. Understanding the pain that you're feeling in labor and delivery is not the same pain that you feel when you stub your toe. It's all these different types of just trying to get into that mindset of just knowing that you can do it.
I appreciate you bringing up your own struggles, and when we're talking about the mental health aspect of it, obviously this is it's a tough time for a lot of people, and there's a lot of adjustments to make. Do you find that kind of the conventional wisdom has as much focus on the mental health as maybe it should, or is that something that you kind of developed by living it?
Well, I think for me personally, it's just from an experience that I've had. I do know, like a lot of people don't go into a group fitness class and find out the mental health benefits of exercise and moving your body and things like that, and learn mindset. There are some places that are like that will teach you those things and, give you that encouragement. But for me personally, I don't think I've experienced anything like that in a group setting, or even in, because a trainer always needs to have their trainer. So even in my own personal training experiences, I don't usually get the whole empathy of my life, just more of like, just do this and you'll feel good, so.
Sure. Were there any misconceptions that you had when you got started that might be helpful to dispel? Anything that just didn't that you thought was true that just wasn't?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for pregnancy is that you can do anything the same way, and you can. I do believe that as long as you know what you're doing and learn how to listen to your body, how to approach, exercise in a way of just knowing when it's the right time to modify, and maybe when it's the right time to push yourself. Those kinds of things are important. But as far as like being like, you just like, I remember in my first pregnancy, my OB was a CrossFitter and my doula was also a CrossFitter, and they were both very excited that I was into fitness and that I wanted to work out. And I remember my OB being like, burpees until the baby comes out. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we're doing this. We're doing burpees. We're going to keep doing it. And then getting certified and learning like burpees are not good for you. Like you can do that, but do you really need to do that? And, so learning how to scale back things, or create, like, instead of doing burpees, let's find a different exercise that you can get the same stimulus from that isn't so hard on your body. So it's just about, yes, you can do whatever you want, but let's be thoughtful about this. Let's think about the long term of all of it. And the same thing for postpartum. There's a lot of misconception that you go to your 6-week checkup and your doctor gives you the clearance to go back to doing whatever you wanted to do before you had your baby. And so a lot of people take that as a sign of like, yes, I could go running, or yes, I can just go right back to my boot camp classes. And it's like, no, yes, you can do that if you want to, but let's take it back a notch and let's speed up this recovery in a safe way so that you can get back to those things, running, boot camp classes, CrossFit classes, all of
Yeah.
that stuff, even stronger than before.
And one of the things that you've talked about a lot when it comes to time constraints, obviously that's such a big thing. If you have a client that comes to you that just doesn't have a lot of time, what do you recommend that they do that maximizes bang for buck in terms of time? Maybe they only have 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there. They don't have the time that a lot of us like to dedicate to fitness. Or do you have specific stuff that you recommend for those circumstances?
For me personally, as a trainer, I do not offer new clients more than 2 sessions a week
Oh,
because
wow.
I've learned that the more sessions you offer in the beginning, the less likely they'll adhere to those sessions. So I always start with just offering 1 or 2 sessions a week. And then once we get going with those 1 or 2 sessions, then we'll revisit it and see, like, how are you feeling about just doing 2 days a week? Are you wanting to do 3 days a week? If you're ready to do 3 days a week, like, let's find that commitment. Let's find where it's going to land in your week and let's do that. And usually by the time we get to that third day a week, they're already feeling really good in their body. They're already feeling really confident in what they're doing. So they're ready to, like, move up, level up a little bit more, you know? But basically I am like I said before, I'm a start small. Don't put too much pressure. We have so much pressure on us to, eat well, work out 5 days a week, read 24 books in 3 months. We have to be present, get off of our phones and only work so many hours, but then also do this at home and build a garden and do all this stuff. And we have so much pressure on ourselves. It's like, why are we trying to do this all at once? Why can't we just take one thing and then make that one thing even more bite size where it's easier for us to achieve it? And then once you can achieve that, it's that snowball effect. It just keeps moving and going. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I gave an example on my Instagram recently where I was saying, back in the day, I saw myself as this person that woke up every morning and journaled, and I wanted to be somebody that worked out every day, and I wanted to eat well. And the things that happened in the snowball effect of that, I started eating well. And then from there, I joined a gym. And then from there, this happened and this happened. And everything has just kind of curated into the life that I always saw myself as. But this person that I am today didn't happen overnight. It started in 2014 when I was like, I'm married now and I want to be a homemaker. So I'm going to start making healthy homemade meals. And that one little thing snowballed into where I am today. So I'm a big believer in that. It's really hard for people to take that kind of advice and actually do it. Which is why I do a lot of hand holding too. I'm like, no, we're doing this together. We are slowing down together. We're gonna find this pattern, and we're gonna really hone it in and get really stronger and better.
Take a quick step back because you mentioned something earlier that your OB and your doula were both big CrossFitters, and so they kind of brought you to, like, oh yeah, you can keep on doing all this stuff and be super fit and do CrossFit all the way, burpees till birth or whatever. Now that you're in this position as a trainer, do you work with doulas and OBs and other people in those professions to help for your clients coordinate a program that actually is better for them on an individual basis?
Yeah, so a lot of my training was about how to collaborate with the health aspect of the pregnancy and postpartum. I haven't had anyone where I've needed to step in and talk to the doula or talk to the OB about, or the midwife about, is this a contraindication? Is this okay? Is this not okay? For the most part, everything that we do, it has been fine. But I do have a lot of friends that are doulas. I do have a lot of friends that are midwives. I am very immersed in that world, especially in Nashville, where, that's where I'm trying to work. Those are the people I'm trying to work with. So you want to create that network. And it's really interesting because I remember after my first pregnancy, when I went back and I got I told my OB, I'm getting this certification in pregnancy and postpartum. She was like, "Oh, that's amazing." And I was like, "Yeah, like next time somebody asks about exercise, please don't tell them to do burpees anymore." And she started laughing and she was like, "Okay." And I was like, "But this is why." And she didn't understand, like she didn't know those things, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when I learned and realized that our midwives and our doctors are there to help us birth a baby. They're not there to help our bodies feel stronger and more capable in birthing a baby. They're there just to make sure that our body is doing what it needs to do to create life and you know, timely manner. And so they don't know the mechanics of it. They don't know those things. And so I try not to overstep in those kinds of things, but when the conversations come up, I'm always happy to give my 2 cents on why something is important or not important.
So you said that, you know, your journey kind of started when you got married 11 years ago or so. And obviously there've been a lot of intermediate steps between here and there. And when a new client comes to you, how do you take this decade plus of your personal journey? How does that inform you when you're setting expectations for them, keeping those expectations realistic and achievable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just all about learning and about what their life, their day to day looks like. I have a client right now. She's done having babies, but she is still struggling with some of the postpartum things that happen to her body. So we're just gentle in those areas. We make sure that we focus on those things. Like it's mainly more about like for her, it's her C-section and trying to build back strength there. And you know, there's a lot of emotion attached to birthing a baby. And there's a lot of emotional processing that you have to do after all of that. And so there are certain things where you could feel guilty for not working out like you did before and having to go through those kinds of emotions and being like, no, but we're here now and we're doing what's right for us right now. Or like that client with her C-section where it's just a trigger for her. And so we work a lot and we talk a lot through like how we can work on those things and help her feel better in her body, and also just know that like where she is today is not where she's going to be in a year from now, and reminding her where we are right now is not where we were a year ago. And it's about being present with them in their present life. And I try not to bring my story into their story, but I can bring my experiences into sharing empathy and, you know, grace for the ways that they may be feeling. Because we're not, you know, we're human. We don't need to go at 100% in every workout that we do. There are some days where, you know, I have a client, she comes in, she's started her period. The last thing she wants to do is lift something really heavy. Or maybe she does want to lift something heavy. Maybe she's raging. I don't know. But we're just so up and down, you know, with our emotions, especially with the female clients. We have a lot. We carry a lot. And so it's just learning to be gentle with that and know when to push and when to kind of scale it back and let them feel good in their body. Because at the end of the day, like I've said before, it's all about the long haul mentality. It's not about pushing those PRs for me. It's not about, you know, doing the most all the time. It's about the small bites that get you to pushing those PRs when you're ready to, when you have the capacity to.
And do you rely largely on intuition when it comes to kind of figuring out the optimal workload for various clients? Or is there anything that you could share, any insight you could share on the podcast? Or do you just kind of trust your intuition and try to listen to these clients and meet them where they are?
Yeah, when I meet up with them, even in my small group class, you can usually get the vibe of how everybody's feeling. And everybody usually has, their days, and then some people are, I don't know. You can just tell when the vibes are low or when the vibes are high.
Intuition. Sounds like intuition.
Yeah, it is intuition. Yeah, it really is. But I do
intuition
always,
and empathy.
Yeah, and it does. I do start all of my sessions, especially my personal training ones, with like checking in. How was your weekend? What did you do this weekend? How are you feeling? What's going on? It could be, oh, well, I had a wedding, so I had a great weekend, but I am exhausted today because it was a long weekend. Or it could be, oh, we just, it rained all weekend, so we just stayed at home. We just laid around, and I am like ready to move.
Stir crazy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so you can kind of take those things, but I'm never an on the fly, like, let's switch up this workout kind of person. That's what the RPEs are for, the ratings of perceived exertion, scale of 1 to 10. So we stay in our lane of like, this is what we're working on right now. But maybe last week you were in beast mode, so you were working at a 8, 9, 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. But this week you're a little more tired. You're dealing with, a sick kid at home. Let's scale it back and go for like a 5, 6, 7 for that. Okay. So that's kind of where I go. But I've also learned, especially in small group classes, and if any of these gals listen to this, they're going to be like, that's her thing. I have learned that when the vibes are low, if you throw in a little bit of swinging something heavy, everybody mood instantly comes up. So if you're ever like, I don't feel like doing this workout, start with something like a wood chop, where you're literally just throwing a weight up overhead and then just swinging it down, or a kettlebell swing where you're just throwing it out and bringing it back in. Something where it just kind of gets your body moving and it gets that heart rate up and it just feels good, So that's what I've learned though, too. If you just are in a funk, just throw something. It just makes you feel better.
Something around. Yeah.
Yes, it just makes you feel great.
And I will say, on a personal note, the wood chop is one of my favorite movements just in general, because it moves through multiple planes of motion. You feel it kind of everywhere almost. Yep. Like it is, and it gets some of those hard to get at core muscles that we often neglect.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it's like the wood chop is the favorite of everyone. I feel like
that's such a good one.
When in doubt, just wood chop it out. Just do it. Just
that's it.
Throw it. Just swing it around. It's great. So
let's talk about pregnant women specifically for a minute, if you don't mind. Just starting at the beginning. What are the fitness considerations that you look at when it comes to working with a pregnant client?
Yeah. Well, so you kind of break it into 4 blocks. So you have first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and then you have the little bitty labor prep that also kind of works you towards not only labor and delivery, but postpartum. The whole umbrella is, we're starting here at pregnancy, but we want to get through the 4th trimester. So you have these like little baby steps each way. Your first trimester, you don't have to modify. You don't have to do much. It's more about just like paying attention to what's going on in your body.
Typical routine.
Yeah. Like, are you tired today? Are you sick? Are you, are you achy? Are you feeling different changes that happen in that first trimester? You just have to be mindful of those things. But for the most part, you just keep moving as is. Your body has not really hit a lot of changes yet. Your second trimester is usually when things kind of start to change. And for some people, it depends on how long they've been, working out their level of
baseline fitness.
Yeah. And so with that, it's more of like, that's when you just start to pay attention to different things to see when it's time to modify and when it's okay. Usually those things are, how are well, my little acronym for figuring those things out is called WAIT. So you take a whole body approach, that's the W. When they're doing an exercise, maybe it feels different than it has in the past. And so we'll stop and I'll just say, you know what, we're going to do it again. But I want you to like really pay attention to what your body is doing. And in that, we focus on your A, which is alignment. So we look at your form. How is your form feeling? How does it look? Because with changes in pregnancy, your back starts to take over sometimes. Your glutes kind of start to tuck under because you're trying to hold the weight.
Right.
Your shoulders kind of round forward a little bit more because everything is just growing forward. So we look at that, and if your alignment is fine, then we don't need to adjust anything. But maybe you're doing overhead pressing and you're starting to use your back a little bit more. So that's when we would maybe modify and just sit down and do it that way, and just find that strategy that's going to work for you there. The second one, the I, is inhales and exhales, which is basically like, are you breathing through the movement? I think sometimes what happens is we get so focused on, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can keep doing this, that we stop breathing through the movement. But then also in pregnancy, the uterus kind of grows and it pushes up that diaphragm, and it makes it difficult to get really good inhales and exhales. So when the breathing starts, you start kind of struggling with the breathing, we'll come up with a different strategy for that exercise, whether it's completely omitting it or finding just a modification for it, or just, changing it up, doing something completely different. That will also work the same muscles. And then the last one is tension, which is just like, how much weight are you using? That's the other thing that we'll kind of focus on in the second trimester, because your core, you really, from day one, we start working on the deep core, because as much as I loved it being a vanity muscle, it's really just, it's the thing that holds you together, so it has to expand. Yes, it has to expand, it has to grow, and we want to be mindful of that. So your core unit, you have the top, which is the diaphragm, the bottom, which is your pelvic floor, you have the sides, which are the obliques. The vanity muscle is that rectus abdominis. And in that rectus abdominis, in between it, is the linea alba. And that linea alba is what stretches. That's what creates that space for the belly to grow. So when it's, when you have your beautiful six-pack muscles, that linea alba is like taut and really strong, and as it grows, it's going to pull and stretch. And we want to be mindful of that. So we don't want to add too much tension onto your core. So if you're lifting, you've been pushing 25-pound weights, you've been pushing 50 pounds overhead for a while, and then all of a sudden you start using your back muscles and you start adding more pressure into that core, then you're adding more pressure onto that linea alba. And when you're not paying attention to that, it doesn't seem like a big deal until after the baby is out of your body. And once it's earthside, that's when you start to see what you did during exercise and how it either benefited or how it may have possibly created a little bit of an injury there. So, postpartum, you can end up with like a diastasis recti injury, which is where that linea alba is just very weak. And so you find a little bit of, it feels like a hole, but it's not a hole, but you can like push down into it. And that's where lower back pains comes from. That's where weak cores come from in postpartum. It's just pushing that too much. So when you're thinking about how you're moving during pregnancy, you want to think about the weight, the load, the reps, the time that you're doing all of this, because if your core can't hold it, if it can't handle that, then we need to scale that back.
Modify it, right?
Yeah. So that's usually what happens in the second trimester. And then by the third trimester, that's when we just start really kind of slowing things down. It's when we heavily modify things. We stop doing a lot of front loading movements. We focus more on the back. We focus a lot of like pelvic and glute and hip work because that gets exhausting. A lot of lower body work because your lower body is literally holding you up at this point, you know.
Sure.
And so those are the kind of the things that we focus, but still always working on that deep core and that pelvic floor, keeping those strong, just to hold you through the whole pregnancy. But then at week 35, that's when we stop all of that. We still strength train. We still do our lower body exercises. We still do our upper body exercises. We do very little core, because what happens from week 35 until the baby is born is your body starts producing this hormone called relaxin, and your body is starting to prepare to get ready to push this baby out. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you're about to learn an anatomy lesson about how a baby is delivered. But the pelvic floor goes from like nothing to 10 centimeters dilated for a baby to come out. So it has to stretch, it has to pull, and you want it to do that. And so at week 35, that's when we stop strengthening the pelvic floor, because you want to give it plenty of time to be relaxed. And you want to be able to, because I like to think of it like a bicep hold, you know, you're just holding your bicep here and you hold it there for too long, it's just going to get really tired, and then you're going to like blow out your bicep. And so you don't want to do that with your pelvic floor, especially when it's already like, you don't want to have it too tight when it's trying to expand, because then you just want to let it be able to do its thing. Because the more you allow your body to just like open up and expand, the easier that baby's going to have coming out. And so that is what we do in week 35. We work less on strengthening the core and the pelvic floor, and we work more on relaxing the pelvic floor, but also learning how to work with your core to help push the baby out. Because you have, in the deep part of your core, you have what's called the transverse abdominis, which is this, it's called the corset muscle, because when you engage it, you feel your whole inside kind of tighten up. It's that feeling like when somebody goes to pretend and punch you in the stomach and you're like, huh, and you tighten that, that's your transverse abdominis. So we want that to be really strong, because that is what's going to aid the uterus. The uterus is what pushes the baby out. Pushing and squeezing your butt and like pushing and bearing down is not going to do that. What is going to do that is tightening the core and helping those contractions push that baby down. So so that's what we spend a lot of time on in that transition between the end of your pregnancy and labor and delivery. And then from there, we take all of that breathing and relaxing techniques that we learned from week 35 till the baby was born, and we start using those to help you in your postpartum healing. Those same relaxing techniques are going to help heal. So it's like this like mountain climb, you know, you're all the way at the top. And so now you have to make this little descent to come down while you're growing the baby. And then once you get the baby out, then you start that hike right back up. And so we just start kind of where we are after the baby comes out for postpartum. And you just start with breathing, reconnecting with your core, starting to build back that strength in that linea alba so that you don't have that diastasis recti and things like that. And then from there, you start adding in your strength exercises, and then you start adding in your like weights, and you start building that back up. And so that's how you get back to where you were. But a lot of people miss that last little step, and they go from, you know, I'm gonna work out until the baby comes, then the baby comes, and then I'm gonna work out starting there. And they miss this beautiful time of just being gentle and loving on your body and allowing it to do what it needs to do, but then also giving it time to like fully heal. So,
and it sounds like you about a month is kind of the time frame, because you said you taper at 35 weeks, which is about a month before a full you have
about like 5 you have about 5 it usually, you know, it can depend, you know,
38 to 40 weeks is regular.
So 35 is kind of where we start, because you just never know. Like once you hit 35, that's when you start having your weekly appointments with your OB or your midwife, and you're just like, you're on baby watch at that point. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like okay, if we're on baby watch, then we're going to like respect our body and also help it get this baby out. Because at the end of the day, that's all you really want at that point anyway. You just want that
to get rid of it.
out. Yeah.
Right.
You want your body back. You want to be able to sleep on your stomach again. You want to feel better. But unfortunately, it's not night and day like that. You're going to have your baby. You're going to feel really weird in it for a while, but that's why we start to reconnect with it. And we just find that love again that we have for it. We feel proud of ourselves, but we also work towards getting us back to where we feel
where you were.
Yeah, confident again. So
yeah.
That's basically the life cycle of the pregnancy postpartum.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was excellent. I really just have one more question about during pregnancy before we get into the postpartum part. And you've already mentioned burpees as contraindicated, but are there other exercises you recommend that pregnant women avoid? And you mentioned posterior chain. Are there other exercises that you would emphasize during pregnancy, just specifically for safety here? I'm thinking specifically about stuff that may be dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, obviously things like skydiving, you're not going to want to do that kind of stuff, like things that are really like going to potentially harm your body. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are people out there that would do that.
Somebody has,
I'm sure. But like I said, there's really nothing you cannot do while you're pregnant. You can do it all. You're just carrying life with you. And I know I make it sound so like, you're just carrying life. It is a big deal, but it's more about the strategies and the network you have around you that can help you kind of understand the changes that are happening and kind of help you say, maybe hiking up a mountain today is probably not the best thing for you to do. But, at the same time, maybe doing hangs from a bar are probably not the best thing to do. It's going to add a little bit more pressure on your core, and we want to be mindful of that. So just simple little tweaks like that, where we're not doing as many front loading movements. We're not doing pikes on the TRX. We're not doing planks. We're maybe bringing it up to an incline if you really want to do planks, but I don't know anybody that would ever say yes to doing planks. Like, I think most people are like, you know what? I'll skip that one today. Let's go into something else.
Someone tells me to skip planks, and for the record, I'm not pregnant, not planning to be. I'll still skip planks if
yes,
if given the opportunity. It's that is not my favorite movement.
Yes, exactly.
Or lack of movement, actually, is the case.
Yeah, exactly.
But what about aerobic exercises? So a mutual friend and friend of the show, Amanda, wants to keep running marathons while pregnant. Like, that's yay or nay?
Keep going. Keep going. I know Amanda has PT friends that are in the running world, so they can help her, really achieve those goals if that's like her goal. But for an amateur runner like me, I probably would stop running at some point. I'd probably run until it didn't feel good anymore. But, if you're also including strength training in your workout routine, so if you're a runner, but you're also adding in strength training, then something that should be a part of that is hip strength and pelvis stability and things like that to really help you continue to stay feeling good. But, like I said in the beginning, all pregnancies are different. So you could be a runner and you could find out you're pregnant, and at 12 weeks, you're like, I can't run anymore. I have to walk. Like it just is not in the cards for me. And that's okay, because once the baby's out and you do a little bit of rehab, you're going to be running again, and you're going to be hitting those marathons again. But I know, and it's really hard. I mean, it's so easy for me to be like, if you just have to stop running, just stop running. But it's the emotion that's tied to it.
It's hard to tell that to a runner.
Yes. Yes, it's true. It's true. It's hard to tell that to like a CrossFitter who's so used to just going hard all the time, to be like, stop.
Yeah.
Just stop for a second. Let's think about what we're doing. Let's stop, let's stop doing burpees and let's do something else. But you
Yeah.
can do it if you want to. there's there's always a strategy for something.
So you mentioned at the end of pregnancy that the last month or so is kind of tapered and becomes a lot gentler. Let's talk about the postpartum timeline and what factors impact that timeline.
Okay. So postpartum, it used to be you needed to wait 6 weeks before you do any kind of movement, but ACOG, which is kind of the highest standard of guidelines for pregnancy and postpartum, a few years ago they changed that and said, you can start moving whenever you feel like it's a good time. And I think they did that because there was just a lot of confusion about what you can and can't do. And there's still a lot of confusion about what you can and can't do because there are a lot of mommy influencers online that'll be like, I just had my baby, and then they're out running, and that is like extremely like dangerous for your body. So don't just start running right away, but gentle things like taking a daily walk for 10 or 15 minutes. And these are things that are really hard, especially for people that are runners. After you have a baby, my OB told me, basically what happens is it goes through this marathon of birth, it births out this child, and then your whole body is literally like, what the F just happened?
Right.
That was the hardest thing that has ever happened. I feel broken. I feel confused. I don't feel normal anymore because my whole organs have shifted just for this baby. And now they're all trying to find their place back in there. And she's like, it's almost like you've gone through a really terrible car crash and you just need to rest. You need to give your body that rest. But there are little things that you can do while you're in that resting period. So things like walking, but only walking for maybe 10 minutes. And I usually say, based on what week you're at is how many minutes you can probably walk. So if you're 1 week postpartum, maybe 10 minutes, but you can do 3 10-minute walks. You can take a walk in the morning,
just make sure you're resting.
Walk in the afternoon, and then you can take a walk in the evening. And that's going to build back that stamina, that endurance that you had before. Mm-hmm. So by week 2, you're doing 20-minute walks. Week 3, you're doing 30-minute. Week 4, you're doing 40-minute walks, and you just keep building from there. With as far as rehabbing, I've talked a lot about breath work and your deep core and pelvic floor work. So you want to get back into those gentle exercises where you can literally do them laying in your bed. You're just laying there, you have your baby just cuddled on top of you, and you're just reconnecting your mind with your core and your pelvic floor, trying to get them to turn back on and work together. It's that same feeling of the frustration that you might feel, and I bet you guys will start doing this when I say this, but if you're looking at your toes and you're like, I want my toes to spread, and they just aren't spreading, right? And you're telling your brain, tell my toes to spread open. And you're like, why will this not work? And you have to work at something like that to get it to connect, that mind, that muscle connection to work together. And then all of a sudden they'll start spreading, and it takes a while. It's the same idea with your core and your pelvic floor. It just went through this traumatic marathon of birth. It feels broken. It feels weird. And it's like, peace out. I'm done. I don't know what you just did to me, but I'm done. And I'm turning off for a while. And so when you get back to it, that's why most women are like, my core feels like mush. Well, it feels like mush because it's telling you it doesn't exist anymore. It's literally it is ghosting you right now. So it's one of those things where you just lay there and everybody has a light bulb moment where all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm telling my brain, inhale, exhale, and then I'm going to lift my pelvic floor. And you won't feel that for sometimes 2 or 3 sessions. And then one day you're doing it and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel my pelvic floor again. Okay, so let's build on that. Let me feel my pelvic floor engage, and then I'm going to engage my core. And you won't feel your core for a few sessions, and then one day you're like, there it is. And then that's when you start adding in more movements. So you'll add in bands to help you add a little more tension into your core and build
Okay.
that awareness. And then from there, you'll start building in with dumbbells or kettlebells, and then just kind of moving through that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it's all about just starting very small and just working on your breath. As again, like I said before, your diaphragm is like super smushed because you've literally grown a baby. And so it has no space, and you want to start with breathing to get that diaphragm to expand again and be strong like it was before, so that you can get through endurance exercises, so you can
Right.
fuel those muscles to get through the strengthening exercises and things like that. So you have to start really small and reconnect with all of that. But once it's reconnected, once that light bulb comes on, it's like bam, 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 and you're just whoo, and you feel. I tell everybody this, and they don't believe me until it happens, but you really do feel more connected and a lot stronger with
Mm.
your body if you take it slower. So that's kind of
Makes
the
sense.
postpartum. Yeah.
It's good to know. A lot of
Yeah.
people struggle to give themselves grace when it comes to that kind of thing, whether it's recovering from an injury or
Hmm.
having a
Hmm.
baby. They
Yeah,
want to
for
get right
sure.
back in and hit it just as hard as they did
Hmm.
before. And there's some adjustment of expectations that has to take place there.
Hmm.
You mentioned exercise bands, which I think are fantastic for at-home exercise. What else do you recommend for someone who has just had the baby and they are just at home right now? It's
Yeah.
hard for them to get out. They've got the baby. Their partner maybe had to
Hmm.
go back to work quickly, so they're kind of stuck in
Hmm.
terms of maybe equipment they could buy, things they could do.
Yeah.
How do you
You
guide someone who's
honestly,
stuck
if
at home?
yeah, so if they have a newborn, it's like the first 6 weeks of having a newborn and you're stuck at home, you don't need any equipment. Like I said, you can literally lay down on your bed and do core and
Hmm.
pelvic floor work. You can lay on the floor while your baby is having tummy time and do 10 minutes of breathing. Sometimes, like, I have an online program where it's follow along, and I'll use a yoga block or a Pilates ball. So if you want to get real fancy with your equipment, you can get those kinds of things online.
Hmm.
But for the most part, you can use a rolled up towel and you can use a firm pillow and things like that. Bands are not required, but they do help add a little bit more tension into
Sure.
feeling your core turn on and working through that and adding just a little bit more of something to feel like you're doing more than you might feel otherwise. So, but as far as like the newborn period, you really don't. You have a stroller or a baby wearing sling. Just
Hmm.
put them in that and take a walk. Like,
Sure.
make the barrier to entry as low as possible, and that will help you succeed and thrive even more and feel motivated to continue to do it.
Well, Stephanie, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. This has been really interesting. If one of our listeners does want to connect with you, you mentioned your online resources, you mentioned in-person classes as well as personal training.
Hmm.
Where can they find you for each of these?
Yeah. Well, I'm on Instagram. It's Stephanie.Gradone. That's where you can get a hold of me. Like,
Sure.
I'm always in my DMs with people. So you send me a DM asking me a question. I'm an open book about it. I don't mind. The whole reason I got into this was because I want people to feel good in their body. I want people to feel educated in their body. And I want people to feel like they have the pregnancy and postpartum experience that they deserve, instead of just becoming another number of
Hmm.
someone who has been just kind of churned through the system, spit out,
Yeah.
and doesn't feel good and had a traumatic
Right.
experience. So I'm there for that. I'm here for the sob stories. I'm here to like cry
Hmm.
with you. I'm here to cheer you on. That is my whole thing. And on there you can find all of my programs. I have online programs. So I have a pregnancy program called BirthFit. I have a postpartum program called Core Restore. And then I have a program that's just for anyone, that's just all women's based, and it's a workout split, and it's called Her Strength. You can find those on there. And then I teach in person. I'm in Kingston Springs, which is about 20 minutes outside of Nashville, which is not as far as people make it seem.
Not at all.
Everybody in Nashville is always like, well, I'm going to go to my gym that's 15 minutes away. And I'm like, yeah, but you could come work out with me and just spend 5 extra minutes in your car. You're in the same place. But I teach at the Movement Studio here in town. It's called AMA. It's a great studio. Even I'm just going to like shout them out because they are, there's strength, there's mat Pilates. I do a strength training class, but it's more female based, and it's been so life-giving, this class has been, because what started out as something that I thought was going to be more geared towards pregnancy and postpartum has turned into multi-generational. So we have 25-year-olds all the way up to 70-year-olds, and we're all just there, happy, cheering each other on, moving together. Everybody is getting stronger. I don't know what I'm going to do in a couple months when I don't have enough weights for everybody, because everybody's just getting stronger, and it's beautiful.
Right.
But we have that. There's lots of different yoga classes. It's an infrared hot yoga studio. So we do strength training in the heat there. We do Pilates in the heat. Sometimes we do, I don't know. It's just a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful space. And the owners there have the same kind of vision for health and wellness that I have, where it's just, we just want you to move your body. We want you to feel good in your body. We want you to move in your body. We want you to find what works for you and continue that. So, but I'm there on like Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I teach one class in the morning, and then that's it. So, but I talk about that on my Instagram. So that's kind of the place where just to find me and see what I'm doing and follow along. I post all my workouts on there. So even if you can't show up or you can't pay for it, you still get a free workout. So you can have something for everyone. Yeah.
And we'll post all this on the show notes, and we'll link to your Instagram as well.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for
this
coming
has been
on.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Really
Well, thanks for having me, and
Thank you.
yeah, I hope you learned a little bit about pregnancy and postpartum. So
I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I hope you did too.
Good.
Thank you for listening. Please make sure to like or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also list the show notes and have lots of bonus content available on Substack or Instagram.